19th century. It is your best work, Basil. The best thing you have ever done.
It's the most fun you can have. Is that changing the
You will
camera?
certainly send it next year to the Grosvenor. The academy is too large and too vulgar. Whenever I have gone there, there have been either so many people that I have not been able to see the pictures, which was dreadful, or so many pictures that I have not been able to see the people, which was worse. The Grosvenor is really the only place. I don't think I shall send it anywhere, he answered, tossing his head back in that odd way that used to make his friends laugh at him at Oxford. No, I won't send it anywhere. Lord Henry elevated his eyebrows and looked at him in amazement through the thin blue wreaths of smoke that curled up in such a fanciful whirls from his heavy opium-tainted cigarette. Not send it anywhere? My dear fellow, why? Have you any reason? What odd chaps you painters are. You do anything in the world to gain a reputation. As soon as you have one, you seem to want to throw it away. It is silly of you, for there is only one thing in the world worse than being talked about, and that is not being talked about.
Hey, Isak.
A portrait like this would see you far above all the young men in England, and make the old men quite jealous. If old men are even... A portrait like this would...
Aww.
I'm quite nervous. I'll calm down in a bit. Not send it anywhere? My dear fellow, why? Have you any reason? What odd chaps you painters are. You do anything in the world to gain a reputation. As soon as you have one, you seem to want to throw it away. It is silly of you, for there is only one thing in the world worse than being talked about, and that is not being talked about. A portrait like this would set you far above all the young men in England, and make the old men quite jealous, if old men are ever capable of any emotion. I know you will laugh at me, he replied, but I really can't exhibit it. I've put too much of myself into it. Lord Henry stretched himself out on the divan and laughed. Yes, I knew you would, but it is quite true all the same. Too much of yourself in it? Upon my word, Basil, I didn't know you were so vain. And I really can't see any resemblance between you, with your rugged, strong face and your coal black hair, and this young Adonis, who looks as if he was made out of ivory and rosewood. Why, my dear Basil, he is a Narcissus. And you, well, of course you have an intellectual expression and all that, but...
Are you eating my shoe?
Real beauty.
Come back.
Ends where an intellectual expression begins.
Going for the camera again?
Intellect is in itself a mode of exaggeration that destroys the harmony of any face. The moment one sits down to think, one becomes all nose or all forehead.
He's going to be such a streamer.
Look at all the successful men in any of the learned professions.
You like the camera?
How perfectly hideous they are. Except, of course, in the church. But then in the church, they don't think. A bishop keeps on saying at the age of 80 what he was told to say when he was a boy of 18. And as a natural consequence, he always looks absolutely delightful. Your mysterious young friend, whose name you have never told me, but whose picture really fascinates me, never thinks.
Oh.
I feel quite sure of that. He is some brainless, beautiful creature who should be
It's
always
quite a nice
here
way
in
to spend a
winter,
Sunday evening.
when we have no flowers to look at.
Don't you agree,
And
chap?
always here in summer, when we want something to chill our intelligence. Don't flatter yourself, Basil. You are not in the least like him. You don't understand me, Harry, answered the artist. Of course I'm not like him. I know that perfectly well.
That swing is
Then
going to
maybe
hit
I
you in
should
the
be sorry
noggin
to
if you
look
let
like
it
him.
go.
You shrug your shoulders. I'm telling you the truth. There's a fatality about all physical and intellectual distinction. A sort of fatality that seems to dog through history, faltering steps of kings. It is better not to be different from one's fellows. The ugly and the stupid have the best of it in this world. They can sit at their ease and gape at the play. If they know
Did it
nothing of
hit your
victory,
hand?
they are at least spared
Oh,
the knowledge of defeat.
baby.
They live as we all should live, undisturbed, indifferent, and without this quiet. They neither bring demon upon others, nor ever receive it from alien
It's
hands.
okay.
Your rank
I give
and
you
wealth,
leave.
Harry. My brains, such as they are, my heart, whatever it may be worth, your ingrates good looks, we shall all suffer for what Your rank and wealth, Harry, my brains, such as they are, my art, whatever it may be worth. Dorian Gray's good looks. We shall all suffer for what the gods have given us. Suffer terribly.
Hi, Josef.
Dorian Gray. Is that his name? Asked Lord Henry, walking across the studio
Hi, din Guardian.
towards Basil Hallward.
Keeps wanting to
Yes,
play
that
with the
is his
swing,
name.
and the swing
I
keeps
didn't
hurting
intend
him.
to tell
Oh,
it to
that's
you.
not what I meant to do.
Why not? Oh, I can't explain. When I like people immensely, I never tell their names to anyone. It is like surrendering a part of them. I have grown to love secrecy. It seems to be the one thing that can make modern life mysterious or marvelous to us. The commonest thing is delightful if one only hides it. When I leave town now, I never tell my people where I'm going. If I did, it would
Keeps
lose all
hurting
my
himself
pleasure.
all the time.
If I did, I would lose all my pleasure. It is a silly habit, I
Hey.
dare say, but
Kan du
somehow
vinka
it
till
seems
kameran?
to bring a great deal of romance into one's life. I suppose you think me awfully foolish about it. Not at all, answered Lord Henry. Not at all, my dear Basil.
Yeah.
You seem to forget that I am married. And the one charm of marriage is that it makes a life of deception absolutely necessary for both parties. I never know where my wife is. My wife never knows what I am doing. When we meet, we do meet occasionally. When we dine out together or go down to the Duke's, we tell each other the most absurd stories with the most serious faces. My wife is very good at it. Much better, in fact, than I am. She never gets confused over her dates, and I always do. But when she does find me out, she makes no row at all. I sometimes wish she would, but she merely laughs at me. I hate the way you talk about your married life, Harry, said Basil Hallward, strolling towards the door that led into the garden. I believe that you are really a very good husband, but that you are thoroughly ashamed of your own virtues. You're an extraordinary fellow. You never say a moral thing. You never do a moral thing. Your cynicism is simply a pose. Being natural is simply a pose. And the most irritating pose I know, cried Lord Henry, laughing. And the two young men went out into the garden together and ensconced themselves on a long bamboo seat that stood in the shade of a tall laurel bush. The sunlight
He almost
slipped
looks a
over the
bit
polished
drunk.
leaves. In the grass, white daisies were tremulous.
Yusuf, do
After a
so, do
pause,
so.
Lord Henry pulled out his watch.
This stream is mostly advertisement for this. If you go to twitch.tv/Siri, you can watch and listen at good quality. We're just hanging out whilst mom is inside reading. At this time of day, Ebbe is the loudest, so that's why we're outside, to not be a bother for Siri.
I told you the real reason. No, you did not. You said it was because there was
We're not a bother,
No,
but
you did not.
not to
You said it was because there was too much of yourself in it. Now that is childish.
have Ebbe speak over her
Said
recording.
Basil Hallward, looking him straight in the face. Every portrait that is painted with feeling is a portrait of the artist, not of the sitter. The sitter is merely the accident, the occasion. It is not he who is revealed by the painter. It is rather the painter who, on the colored canvas, reveals himself. The reason I will not exhibit this picture is that I am afraid that I've shown in it the secret of my own soul. Lord Henry laughed. And what is that? He asked. I will tell you, said Hallward. But an expression of perplexity came over his face. I'm all expectation, Basil, continued his companion, glancing at him. Oh, there's really very little to tell, Harry, answered the painter. I am afraid you will hardly understand it. Perhaps you will hardly believe it. Lord Henry smiled and, leaning down, plucked a pink-petaled daisy from the grass and examined it. I'm quite sure I shall understand it, he replied, gazing intently at the little golden-white feathered disc. And as for believing things, I can believe anything, provided that it is quite incredible. The wind shook some blossoms from the trees, and the heavy lilac blooms with their clustering stars moved to and fro in the languid air. A grasshopper began to chirrup by the wall, and like a blue thread, a long, thin dragonfly floated past on its brown gauze wings. Lord Henry felt as if he could hear Basil Hallward's heart beating, and wondered what was coming.
Hi, Spiritus.
The story is simply this.
Are you confused about what type of content this is?
2 months
Is anyone
ago,
else
I
in
went
chat
to a crush
confused
at
about
Lady
what type of
Brandon's.
content this is?
You know, we poor artists have to throw ourselves in society from time to time just to remind the public that we are not savages. With an evening coat and a white tie.
It's basically the family hanging out while Siri's
Anybody,
working.
even a stockbroker, can get
Oh, the
gain a
camera's in that
reputation
side.
for being civilized.
So confused.
Well, after I had been in the room about 10 minutes, talking to huge, overdressed
So,
dowagers and tedious academic.
So Siri is streaming,
After I had been
and
in
I'm
the room
watching her
about 10
stream,
minutes,
which I of course have
talking to
permission
huge,
to because
overdressed dowagers and
she's the mother of
tedious
our child.
academicians,
And
I suddenly became
Ebbe,
conscious.
1 year old,
Someone was looking at me.
is out here in his witching hour. You know, it's the hour before sleep, and everything is just. He's very loud. He's very talkative. La 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 la.
I had come face to face with
And-
someone whose mere personality was so fascinating. If I allowed it to do so, it would absorb my whole nature.
And she's doing a audiobook, and we want to record this for YouTube. It's good if Ebbe doesn't add himself to the recording, so we're outside. And then I thought, why not listen to it as well, because I'm curious.
Then I don't know how to explain it to you. Something seemed to tell me that I was on the verge.
You have a
of
boy,
terrible crisis
little
in my
guy,
life.
okay.
I had a strange feeling that fate.
A little
boy.
Your first? This is our first.
Sorrows. I grew excited and turned to quit the room. It was not conscience that made me do so. It was a sort of cowardice.
Are you talking to the
I
camera?
take no credit to myself for trying to escape. Conscience and cowardice are really the same thing.
You have so
Faithful.
much to say.
Conscience is the trade name of the firm. That is all. I don't believe that, Harry. And I don't believe you do either. However, whatever was my motive, I may have been fine. For you three little pal, I certainly started to the door. There, of course, I stumbled against Lady Brandon. "You don't have to run away so soon, Mr. Hallward," she screamed out. You know her curious, shrill voice? Yes. She's a peacock and everything but beauty. Yes. She's a
Do you want to
peacock
borrow
and
Daddy's
everything
cap?
but beauty,
You're...
said Lord Henry, pulling the daisy to bits with his long, nervous fingers. I
No,
could
you
not
don't
get
want
rid of her. She brought me up to royalties and people with stars and garters, and elderly ladies with gigantic tails and parrot noses.
It is, Spiritus.
She spoke of me as her dearest friend.
Sun is setting.
I had only met her once before, but she took it into her head to lionize
If we
me.
didn't have Siri, you would hear
Some
the
picture of mine had made a great
cicades,
success
I
at
think
the
they're
time.
called.
Or at least had been chattered about in the penny newspapers, which is the 19th century standard of immortality. Suddenly I found myself face to face with a young man whose personality had so strangely stirred me.
So it's a very calm
You were
and
quite
beautiful Sunday
Almost
evening.
touching.
Oh,
But I
hey.
again. He was reckless
You
of
hide
me,
the chat?
and I asked Lady Brandon to introduce me to him.
More water?
Perhaps it was not so reckless.
You're
after
getting
all,
really
it was
tired.
Simply inevitable. We would have spoken to each other without any introduction, I'm sure of that. Dorian told me so afterwards. He too felt that we were destined to know each other.
Oh, your sock is falling off.
And how did Lady Brandon describe this wonderful young man? Asked his companion. I know she goes in for giving a rapid précis of all her guests. I remember her bringing me up to a truculent and red-faced old gentleman, covered all over with orders and ribbons, and hissing into my ear in a tragic whisper, which must have been perfectly audible to everybody in the room. The most astounding details. I simply fled. I like to find out people for myself. Lady Brandon treats her guests exactly as an auctioneer treats his goods. She either explains them entirely away, or tells one
I
everything
absolutely
about
think he's talking to you guys because normally he doesn't speak this much.
Poor Lady
I mean, he
Brandon,
might be
oh,
talking to
God in
himself
heaven,
for all I know. But
said Hallward listlessly. My dear fellow, she
Vem
tried
är
to
det?
found a sound.
Är det du?
My dear fellow, she
Oj!
found a salon. Damn it. My dear fellow. Oh, let me take a pause.
I need to tell her to adjust the hair a little bit. Because it's covering the frame. Let's see if Ebbe can crawl over me.
Salon or saloon? I'm not sure. I'm doing my best at pronouncing words that I have never seen before. Adjust the hair a little. Get it out of the way a bit.
Is it like rotation lock on?
Happy
Yes.
Sunday, Chinty.
Why?
Cheers. Cheers.
That's better, right? Wait,
Doesn't
on
help
this
that he's
side.
so old. He's quite old.
So when she reads, we see her
Mm,
face.
Style of writing now. Wow. Alright,
I think that's better.
I'm gonna say salon. Saloon? Saloon? Salon? Poor Lady Brand. You were hard on her, Harry. Said Hallward
Climbing
listlessly.
over Daddy.
My dear fellow, she tried to found
Only
a
put
saloon.
that mommy up here.
And only... I said saloon. Salon. Oh, that's sweet, baby.
Your
Sam. All right,
socks.
let's try it.
You wanna go no socks?
1-0.
Try it.
1-0.
He might be
So
cold.
it's salon. It's salon. It's not saloon. Okay. Poor Lady Brandon. Her heart on her head, said Hallward listlessly. My dear fellow, she tried to found a salon and only succeeded in opening a restaurant. How could I admire her? But tell me, what did she say about Mr. Dorian Gray?
Debated.
Oh, something like, charming boy, poor dear mother and I, absolutely inseparable, quite forget what he does. Afraid he doesn't do anything. Oh yes, plays the piano. Where's
You wanna
the
give the
violin,
socks
dear
to the
Mr.
camera?
Gray?
I can give it to the camera.
Neither of us could help laughing,
Yum, 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 yum,
and
yum.
we became friends at once. Laughter is not at all
that good?
a bad beginning for a friendship, and it is far the best ending for one. said
want
the
some
young
water?
lord, plucking another daisy. Hallward shook his head. You don't understand what friendship is, Harry, he murmured. Or what enmity is, for that matter. You like everyone. That is to say, you are indifferent to everyone. How horribly unjust of you, cried Lord Henry, tilting his hat back and looking up at the little clouds that, like raveled skeins of glossy white silk, were drifting across the hallowed
You can't
turquoise
have
of the
that in
summer
coffee.
sky. Yes, horribly unjust of you. I make a great difference between people.
Oh, you
I
want
choose my
that as
friends for their
coffee?
good looks, my acquaintances for their good character, and my enemies for their good intellects. A man cannot be too careful in the choice of his
He's
enemies.
tired.
I have not got one who is a fool. They are all men of some intellectual power, and consequently they all appreciate me. Is that very vain of me? I think it is rather vain. I should think it was, Harry. But according to your category, I must be merely an acquaintance. My dear
Oh.
old Basil, you are much more than an acquaintance. Also, I fear that his name is Basil, not Basil. Salon and saloon is not really the same thing. No, it's not. Salon.
Are you eating my power bank? Out of all of the things
Salon.
you can play with,
Salon.
how is this the most fun, huh?
Salon. I'm British with it. My dear old Basil, you are much more than a acquaintance, and much less than a friend. Sort of brother, I suppose. Oh, brothers. I don't
Are you-
care for brothers.
Are you getting upset that
My
I'm
older
not sharing my
brothers
toy?
died, My younger brothers seem never to do anything else. Harry, exclaimed Hallward, frowning. My dear fellow, I am not quite sure. I can't help thinking of my reasons. I suppose it comes from that. I mean, you can find other people's values and make them like themselves. I quite sympathize with the rage of the English democracy against what they call the vices of the upper.
Let me change camera. Let's see if we can. so pretty. And quite abundant. They have like doubled in size this year. It's 2 groups. Don't mind this planter. It's not done. It might never get done, to be honest. But it's gonna be more things in it eventually. Where you going? Are you catching up? Well, then I'll run faster.
Makes a mistake, she has to start over. Hashtag the never-ending story. Not even audiobook recorders do that. You start over. You started with a section, perhaps. And also you read a lot of it.
Kan det stå?
You read things ahead of time and you learn words and all that.
Kan det stå där? Kan det stå?
You've read the section over so you know where to put your things.
Oh, a one-legged rice? Oh, you almost. Can you do it? Do you need a hand? Can I let go? You got it. You got it. Oof. It's not fast. And you do fall. But you're getting so good. Mm. Let's go back to the blanket.
An idea to a true Englishman, always a rash thing to do. He never dreams of considering whether the idea is right or wrong. The only thing he considers of any importance is whether one believes it oneself. Now, the value of an idea has nothing whatsoever to do with the sincerity of the man who expresses it. Indeed, the probabilities of that, the more insincere. Indeed, the probabilities are that the more insincere the man is, the more purely intellectual will the idea be. As in that case, it will not be colored by either his wants, his desires, or his prejudices. However, I don't propose to discuss politics, sociology, or metaphysics with you. I like persons better than principles, and I like persons with no principles better than anything else in the world. Tell me more about Mr. Dorian Gray. How often do you see him? Every day. I couldn't be happy if I didn't see him every day. He's absolutely necessary to me. Every day. I couldn't be happy if I didn't see him every day. He's absolutely necessary to me. How extraordinary. I thought you would never care for anything but your art. He is all my art to me now, said the painter gravely. I sometimes think, Harry, there are only 2 eras of any importance in the world's history. The first is the appearance of a new medium for art, and the second is the appearance of a new personality for art also. What the invention of oil painting was to the Venetians, the face of Antonius was to late Greek sculpture, and the face of Dorian Gray will someday be to me. It is not merely that I paint from him, draw from him, sketch from him. Of course, I've done all that.
Stick with
But he
leaves.
is much more to me than a model or a sitter. I won't tell you that I am dissatisfied with what I have done of him, or that his beauty is such that an art cannot express it. There is nothing that art cannot express. And I know that the work I have done since I met Dorian Gray is good work. It's the best work of my life. But in some curious way, I wonder, will you understand me? His personality has suggested to me an entirely new manner in art, an entirely new model of style. But in some, but in some curious way, I wonder, will you understand me? His personality has suggested to me an entirely new manner in art, an entirely new mode of style. I see things differently. I think of them differently. I can now recreate life in a way that was hidden from me before. A dream of form in days of thought. Who is it who says that? I forget. but it is what Dorian Gray has been to me. A merely visible presence of this lad, for he seems to me little more than a lad, though he is really over 20. His mere visible presence, I wonder, can you realize all that means? Unconsciously, he defines for me the lines of a fresh school, a school that is to have in it all the passion of the romantic spirit, all the perfection of the spirit that is Greek.
You're so cute when you sit down.
How much that is. We in our
Chat, what
madness
time
have
is it?
separated the two, and have